Every morning, before the desert became too hot, I carried my little wooden bucket to the old stone well. The rope always felt rough in my hands, and every morning, cold water waited for me. That never made sense. Our village sits in one of the hottest, driest places on earth. The sand burns, the wind is dry. Sometimes, not a single cloud appears for weeks. So why was the water always so cold? Grandpa only smiled whenever I asked. He never answered. He simply filled his bucket and quietly walked away. I had no idea that one small question was about to lead me beneath the desert itself. My name is Amina. This little village is my whole world. People think a desert is empty, but ours is full of life. Long rows of sweet grapes, cool stone wells, mud brick homes warmed by the morning sun, and neighbors who know every face by name. The water flowing through our vineyards is quiet. You almost forget it's there. Until you remember, nothing here could live without it. I always believed our greatest treasure was the water itself. I just didn't know. Its journey had begun long before I was born. The next morning, I decided to follow Grandpa. Not too close, because he always seemed to know when someone was behind him. He didn't walk toward the vineyards. He walked farther and farther into the open desert. At first, I thought he was simply checking old wells, but something felt strange. They weren't scattered around the land. They stood in a perfect line, one after another, stretching across the sand, all the way toward the distant mountains. I counted them. 1, 2, 3, then I lost count. Grandpa finally turned around and smiled. He didn't tell me the answer. Instead, he asked, "What do you think they're hiding?" I looked at the silent stone wells, and suddenly, I had even more questions than before. Grandpa walked to the nearest stone well and gently lifted the wooden cover. Cool air floated upward. It felt impossible. Outside, the desert shimmered beneath the burning sun, but inside the well, the air was cold enough to make me shiver. He lowered a small lantern into the darkness. I leaned forward, carefully looking inside. There was no deep pool, no underground lake, only a narrow tunnel and a quiet stream flowing beneath my feet. It wasn't just one well. Every stone well we had passed was connected. I looked back across the desert. Those little circles weren't ordinary wells at all. They were tiny windows into a hidden river that almost nobody could see. And then I wondered, why would anyone hide a river underground? I couldn't stop thinking about that hidden river. If water loved the sunlight, why would it choose the darkness? Grandpa didn't answer. Instead, he placed 2 small bowls of water on the ground. One sat beneath the blazing desert sun. The other rested in the cool shade beside the stone well. We waited. Not for long. The bowl under the sun became warm. Little by little, the water began to disappear. But the bowl in the shade hardly changed at all. Grandpa looked at me and smiled. He still didn't explain. He didn't need to. For the first time, I understood that the desert wasn't only thirsty, it was stealing water every single day. Maybe our ancestors didn't hide the river. Maybe they were protecting it. That afternoon, Grandpa drew a long line across the sand. At one end, he shaped tiny mountains. At the other, he drew our village. Then, using his finger, He carved a tunnel beneath the ground. "The water begins here," he whispered, pointing toward the snowy peaks. "When the snow melts, it slowly sinks into the earth." His finger followed the hidden path beneath the sand until it reached our village. No pumps, no engines, only gravity, patiently doing its work. The river had been traveling quietly beneath my feet long before I was born, and somehow it never forgot the way home. I used to think the hardest part of living in the desert was finding water, but Grandpa showed me something else. The hardest part was building a path for water to travel. Hundreds of years ago, our ancestors had no machines, no electricity, no modern tools. Only their hands, their patience, and their understanding of the land. They dug small tunnels beneath the desert. They connected one stone well to another. Slowly, carefully, day after day, they followed the mountain water and created a hidden road beneath the sand. I imagine those people working in the darkness, never knowing if future generations would remember their names. But they continued, because they were not building only for themselves. They were building for us. After learning the secret beneath the desert, I started seeing my village differently. The vineyards were not just vineyards anymore. Every grape, every tree, every garden carried the story of that hidden river. The water traveled quietly underground, then rose into the sunlight, bringing life to everything around us. Families cooked, children played, farmers planted their crops, grandparents rested beneath the grapevines. All because something invisible was working silently beneath our feet. I finally understood. The Karez was never just a way to bring water here. It was the reason our home could exist, and every person in the village was connected to it. I thought the people who protected the Karez were only the ones who walked beneath the ground, but I was wrong. On that morning, the entire village gathered around the old stone wells. Grandpa climbed down into the cool tunnels. Some people carried ropes, some prepared baskets. Others carefully cleaned the stone paths around the wells. Even children like me had a small job to do. At first, I wondered why everyone cared so much about something they could barely see. Then Grandpa placed an old wooden scoop in my hands. It was worn, simple, covered with marks from many years of use. He smiled, as if he was giving me something much more important than a tool. And suddenly, I understood. A river stays alive because many hands choose to protect it. That evening, I held the old wooden scoop in my hands. I looked at every small scratch, every worn corner, every mark left behind. And I wondered, how many people had held it before me? Maybe a child who lived hundreds of years ago held the same scoop. Maybe they looked at the same flowing water and dreamed of the same future. They never knew my name. They never knew I would stand here one day. But they still protected this river. Not because they wanted to be remembered, but because they loved their home. And in that moment, I finally understood something. The greatest gift our ancestors left behind was never only water. It was their wisdom, their kindness, and their promise to take care of what they loved. The next morning, I returned to the old stone well. The desert was still the same. The sun was still warm. The water was still cold. But somehow, everything felt different. Before, I only wondered where the water came from. Now, I saw everything connected. The mountains above us, the hidden tunnels below us, the vineyards around us, and the people who cared for them. The Karez was not just a path for water. It was a path connecting generations, from the hands of our ancestors to Grandpa's hands, from Grandpa's hands to mine. Now I finally understood. Our village never hid the river. We protected it, so the river could protect us. Tomorrow, another child may stand beside this same stone well. Maybe they will look at the cold water and ask the same question I once asked. How can a river exist beneath a desert? And maybe someone will gently take their hand and show them the answer. Not through a book, not through a lesson, but through a story, through a family, through a place they call home. Because water can give life, but love is what teaches us to protect it. The river beneath our feet continues to flow, and so does the wisdom of those who came before us.